I am Edward Sullivan. I'm 73 years old. I just spent 2 weeks in Vancouver holding my mother's hand until she passed. I came home last night, exhausted, broken, just wanting the comfort of my wife Carol. But the house was silent until I heard it, a faint scratching sound from the basement. I found a new padlock, a heavy-duty steel lock I'd never seen before, locking the door from the outside. I broke it open and found my wife. Filthy, dehydrated. She'd been down there for days. When the 911 operator asked what happened, I looked at Carol, looked at the broken lock, and I lied. I said she must have fallen, that the door jammed, because I needed time. I needed to know why my wife, when I asked who did this, whispered the name of our only daughter. The drive home from Vancouver had been a 6-hour blur of rain and grief. The Seattle traffic was unforgiving, but I barely noticed. For 2 solid weeks, I had sat vigil in a sterile beige hospital room, watching my mother, 95 years old, finally let go. I held her frail, paper-thin hand as she took her last breath. I was exhausted, a bone-deep weariness that only grief and age can produce. I'm 73 years old. My back ached, my eyes burned, and all I wanted in the world was to fall into the arms of my wife, Carol. 50 years we've been married. She's my rock. I pulled into our driveway in the Queen Anne neighborhood. The house was dark. Carol usually left the porch light on for me. A small knot of unease tightened in my stomach. I brushed it off. Maybe she'd fallen asleep reading. I fumbled with my keys, my hands stiff. I pushed the door open. "Carol, I'm home, honey." The house was silent. Not just quiet. It was a dead, hollow silence. The air was stale. I hit the light switch in the entryway. The first thing I saw was the mail. A thick stack was piled on the small table by the door, unopened. That wasn't like Carol. She never let the mail pile up. "Carol," I called again, louder this time. I walked into the kitchen. A single glass of water sat on the counter, half empty. A film of dust had settled around its base. My heart rate started to quicken. I walked through the living room into our bedroom. The bed was perfectly made, untouched. I checked the bathroom. Empty. Then the smell hit me. It wasn't the smell of rotting food or garbage. It was sour, acrid. It was the smell of old sweat and waste. It was the smell of something I hadn't smelled since I was a young soldier, the smell of human despair. The knot in my stomach turned to ice. "Carol," I yelled, real panic in my voice now. Where was she? Had she fallen? Had someone... I stood at the top of the basement stairs, and I heard it. A faint scratch, like an animal. A weak, dry, scratching sound. My blood ran cold. I looked down. The basement door, the old wooden door that led down to the furnace and our storage, the door we never locked, was secured with a brand new heavy-duty hardened steel padlock. It was gleaming under the hallway light. My mind couldn't process it. We didn't own this lock. Our only padlock was a small rusty brass one on the garden shed outside. This was an invader. This was an act of malice. "Carol!" I screamed, pounding on the door. "Are you in there?" A weak thud, thud, thud came from the other side. A desperate, muffled sound. She was in there. She was alive. I ran stumbling to the garage. My tools. My God, where were the bolt cutters? My hands were shaking so violently I could barely grab them. I'm 73 years old. My back screamed in protest as I ran back to the door. I jammed the jaws of the cutters around the thick steel shackle. I squeezed. My hands, worn with age, weren't strong enough. "Hang on, Carol, I'm here." I put all my weight into it, grunting, crying out, a desperate guttural sound. The steel groaned. Finally, with a sharp crack, the shackle snapped. The lock fell to the floor with a heavy metallic clang. I ripped the door open. The stench hit me like a physical blow. ammonia, filth. It was suffocating. I fumbled for the light switch. The single bare bulb flickered on, and I saw her. My wife. My Carol. She was huddled in the far corner on the cold concrete floor. She was in her nightgown, the one I'd bought her for our anniversary. It was stained and filthy. Her skin was gray, pulled tight over her bones. Her lips were black and cracked open, caked with dried blood. Her eyes, sunken into her skull, were barely open. Beside her was a 5-gallon bucket, overturned, the contents spilled, and a single empty plastic jug of water. She looked ancient. She looked like she was already gone. Carol? Oh God, Carol! I scrambled down the stairs, nearly falling. I knelt beside her, my hands shaking. I had a half-empty bottle of water from the drive. I unscrewed the cap, poured a little on my fingers, and just wet her lips. Her eyes fluttered. They slowly, painfully tried to focus. Ed? Her voice wasn't a voice. It was a dry rasp, a whisper of dust. I'm here, honey. I'm here. Who did this to you? Who did this? She tried to lift a hand. It was too heavy. She licked her lips, tasting the water, and she whispered. Just 2 words at first. Jenny. Our Jenny. My mind recoiled. No. Not our daughter. Not our only child. And Matt, Carol whispered. They came. Said they needed. She passed out. Her head lolled to the side. I dialed 911. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were perfectly still. A cold, clear rage, a rage so pure it felt like ice in my veins had taken over. I had seen death. I had seen betrayal, but this was something else. The 911 operator picked up. 911, what is your emergency? I looked at my wife's broken body. I looked at the broken lock on the floor. I knew instinctively I could not tell the truth. If I did, Jenny would have a story. She would cry. She would have a defense. I needed time. I needed to understand why. I took a deep breath. My wife, I said, forcing a sob into my voice. She's in the basement. I think she fell. The door must have jammed. She's been down there. I don't know how long. Please hurry. I hung up. The lie was told. The war had just begun. The hospital was a different kind of prison. The air smelled sharp, a sterile mix of bleach and quiet panic. I sat on a molded plastic chair just outside the intensive care unit, my knuckles white as I gripped the armrests. I had scrubbed the filth off my hands in the men's room, scrubbing until my skin was raw, but I could still feel the grit from that steel padlock under my nails. My clothes were stained with basement dust and with Carol, a doctor in blue scrubs, his face too young for the exhaustion. In his eyes walked toward me. He was holding a digital tablet. Mr. Sullivan? I stood up. My 73-year-old body felt ancient, brittle. My wife, Carol, is she? He didn't offer any empty comforts. He gestured to a small windowless consultation room just down the hall. We need to talk, he said. I followed him. The room felt like a closet. He shut the door, and the silence was heavy. My name is Dr. Ramirez, he began. Your wife is stabilized for now, but I need you to understand the severity of her condition. She is suffering from acute kidney failure. Her electrolytes are critically unbalanced, and she is in a state of severe malnutrition. He was reading from the tablet, but his eyes kept flicking up to mine, searching, analyzing. She's just weak. I stammered the lie I told the 911 operator, feeling clumsy on my tongue. She's 71, she must have fallen. Mr. Sullivan. He interrupted, his voice kind but razor sharp. This isn't weakness from a fall. This is neglect. Based on her renal function, the muscle deterioration, my best estimate is that she has been without adequate food or water for at least 10 days. Possibly 12. 10 days. The words hung in the air. 14 days. The entire time I was in Vancouver. Jenny, our daughter. She had left her mother to starve to death the entire time I was gone. The doctor continued. You told the EMTs the door jammed. A door doesn't jam for 10 days, Mr. Sullivan. And that padlock, the police who responded to the 911 call took a look at it. It wasn't jammed. It was locked from the outside. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was moving too fast. I don't understand. I lied, my voice cracking. Dr. Ramirez leaned forward, his voice dropping to a serious low tone. Sir, I need you to be honest with me. This is not a simple fall. This is a crime scene. I am a mandated reporter. I am legally and morally obligated to report this to Adult Protective Services and the Seattle Police Department as severe elder abuse and likely attempted homicide. No. The word burst out of me louder than I intended. The doctor raised an eyebrow. I couldn't let him. Not yet. If the police got involved now, Jenny would have a story. She would cry. She would lie. I needed control. I needed to understand why. I buried my face in my hands, summoning the real crushing grief of my mother's passing and mixing it with this new, terrifying reality. Doctor, please, I said, my voice muffled, desperate. You don't understand. Carol, she hasn't been herself for months. The doctor waited. What do you mean, not herself? I looked up, forcing tears into my burning eyes. It felt like acid in my mouth, betraying her, using her as a shield. But it was the only way. She's been confused, wandering. Last month I found her in the garden at 3 a.m. talking to the roses. She forgets my name sometimes. She gets paranoid. She thinks people are watching her. I was inventing it on the spot, building a fortress of lies. She must have locked herself in. I continued the story, taking shape. She's been obsessed with security lately. That new lock. Maybe she bought it. Maybe she thought she was locking someone out. I let the sentence hang, letting him fill in the blanks. I was just a devastated husband, terrified that his wife was finally losing her mind. Dr. Ramirez stared at me for a long, agonizing moment. He didn't look fully convinced, but he saw my pain. Dementia, Alzheimer's, he asked. We haven't had her tested, I whispered. We were afraid. I was afraid. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Mr. Sullivan, this complicates the reporting. I'll need to run a full neurological and psychiatric evaluation on her as soon as she's physically stable. But I can hold the official report for 24 hours, just until we understand her baseline mental state. That's all I can give you. I nodded, overflowing with false gratitude. Thank you, doctor. Thank you. I need to call my daughter, Jenny. I need to tell her about her mother's condition. He nodded curtly and left the room. I didn't move. I had bought myself 24 hours, and now I knew exactly what I had to do. I had to see the look on my daughter's face when I told her that her mother was alive. I sat on that hard plastic chair in the hospital hallway, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic and sickness. The doctor's words echoed in my head. 10 days. Not a fall. A crime scene. I had bought myself 24 hours. 24 hours to figure out how the little girl I taught to ride a bike had turned into a monster, capable of leaving her own mother to die on a cold, concrete floor. My hands were trembling, not from grief anymore, but from a cold, simmering rage. I pulled out my phone. I had to make the call. I had to summon the vipers to the pit. My thumb hovered over the contact name Jenny, but I didn't have to. The heavy glass doors of the ICU waiting area burst open with a pneumatic whoosh. "Dad!" Jenny's voice was a shriek. It wasn't a cry of worry. It was an accusation. She ran toward me, her expensive heels clicking loudly on the sterile linoleum floor. Her husband, Matt, was right behind her, his face a mask of what looked like thunderous anger. She slammed into me, burying her face in the shoulder of my travel-worn jacket. "Oh my God, Dad! We just got the message! What happened? What happened to Mom?" Her shoulders heaved with dramatic gulping sobs. It was a perfect performance. Flawless. But I had just spent 2 weeks holding my mother's hand as she actually died. I knew what real grief felt like. This wasn't it. I held her stiffly. Her body was shaking, but the front of my shirt remained suspiciously dry. I could feel her eyes pressed against my chest, darting around the hallway, taking in the scene. Matt didn't hug me. He stopped 3 feet away, his arms crossed, his jaw tight. He's a big man, Matt. A former high school football player who never quite lost the attitude. "Ed," he said. His voice was sharp, disrespectful. He never called me Dad. What the hell happened? We were on our way to a client dinner. Jenny checks her phone and there's a frantic voicemail from the hospital. He took a step closer, crowding me. The message said she was found. Found where? Where were you? There it was. The attack. The immediate aggressive pivot to blame. I pulled back from Jenny, letting her weep into her hands. I looked at Matt, summoning every ounce of my 73 years, my exhaustion from the drive, my very real grief for my mother. I just got back, I whispered. My voice cracked. It wasn't hard to fake. From Vancouver. Your grandma. She passed. Oh, Dad. Grandma, too. Jenny's voice was high and thin, a perfectly timed note of added tragedy. I came home. I continued, my gaze fixed on Matt, ignoring Jenny's performance. The house, it was quiet. I found her. In the basement. The basement, Matt repeated, his voice dripping with incredulity. The door, I said, my voice shaking. It was jammed, Matt. Shut tight. I had to break it down. She was just lying there. Matt's eyes narrowed to slits. Jammed? What are you talking about? How long was she down there? He took another aggressive step, pushing into my personal space. How could you let this happen, Ed? You leave her alone for 2 weeks, and this is what we find. You were supposed to be taking care of each other. You failed her. It was brilliant in its own sociopathic way. They hadn't just done it. They had prepared a defense. And their defense was that I was the one who was neglectful. I just stared at him, my heart a cold stone in my chest. I let the accusation hang in the air. Jenny looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy. How did she do that so fast? Her face was a perfect mask of fear and sorrow. But her question shouldn't, will she be okay? Her question, the only one that mattered to her, slipped out in a terrified whisper. Dad, did she say anything? Jenny's question hung in the air. Did she say anything? I let the silence stretch. I looked up at my daughter, my vision blurry. I let the real tears for my mother mix with the horror of the basement. I let my shoulders slump. I am 73 years old. I don't have to fake exhaustion. Say anything, I repeated. My voice was a dry croak. Jenny, she wasn't making any sense. She was... God, she was so cold. I slumped back into the plastic chair, putting my head in my hands. I needed to look broken. I was broken. just not in the way they thought. I don't know. I whispered the words muffled by my hands. I just don't know. The lock, that new lock, I don't understand where it came from. Your mother, she must have what Ed, Matt pressed. His voice was hard. She must have locked herself in. I looked up at him, my face a mask of bewilderment. Maybe the doctor. He asked if she was confused. I told him yes. I told him she hasn't been herself. I had to. Jenny's fake sobs subsided, replaced by a nervous, twitchy energy. She wasn't looking at me. She wasn't looking toward the ICU door. She was looking at her phone. She kept pulling it out of her expensive handbag, checking the screen, and quickly putting it back. Was she expecting a call? A bank notification? Matt, however, was focused. He wasn't performing anymore. He was calculating. He saw Dr. Ramirez walking down the hall toward the nurses' station. "Wait here," he snapped at Jenny. He strode over to the doctor, cutting him off before he could reach the desk. I watched them from a distance. I was just the confused old man in the corner, invisible. I couldn't hear everything, but I didn't need to. I watched Matt's body language. He wasn't asking, "How do we help her?" He was grilling the doctor. He kept gesturing. He pointed to his own head. He made a writing motion in the air. After a few minutes, Dr. Ramirez left, looking annoyed. Matt walked back over to us. His face was grim, but there was a strange look in his eyes. A look of assessment. "Well," Jenny asked him, standing up. "What did he say?" Matt ignored her and looked straight at me. "Ed, the doctor says she's stable, but he's worried." "Worried?" I asked, playing my part. "Worried about what?" Matt put his hand on my shoulder. It wasn't a comforting gesture. It was a gesture of control. "He's worried about her prognosis," Matt said, emphasizing the clinical term. "He's worried about brain function. 10 days without water. That does things to a person." Jenny held her breath. Matt leaned in. I asked him, "What's the long-term outlook, I mean? Is she going to be permanently damaged?" And there it was. The real question. He didn't ask, "Will she recover?" He didn't ask, "Will she be in pain?" He didn't ask, "Is she scared?" He asked if she was permanently damaged. I stared at him. The cold reptilian calculation behind his eyes was terrifying. They weren't worried about Carol. They were worried about Carol talking. They were worried if the woman they tried to murder could wake up and send them to prison. I had to give them the answer they needed. "Damaged?" I whispered, my voice thick with fake despair. "Oh God. You mean, like she won't be mom anymore?" Matt held my gaze. "That's exactly what I mean, Ed." I had my answer, and now they needed to have theirs. I left them in the hallway. Jenny was already back on her phone, pacing her voice a low, urgent whisper. Matt was just staring at the ICU door, not with sadness, but with a cold, impatient calculation. I told them I needed to go home to get Carol's things, her robe, her slippers, her toiletries. "Of course, Dad," Jenny had said, not even looking up from her screen. Just let us know what the doctor says about her, prognosis." I drove home. The 15-minute drive felt like an eternity. The house looked the same from the outside. A simple 2-story Craftsman in Queen Anne, a house we'd owned for 40 years. But as I walked up the steps, I didn't see my home. I saw a crime scene. Every window was an eye that had watched. Every floorboard was a witness. The basement door was still open, the broken padlock lying on the floor where I had thrown it. The smell, that horrible sour smell, still lingered in the air. I closed the door, shutting away the image of Carol on the concrete. I walked to my study. To Jenny and Matt, this room was just Dad's old office. It was where I kept my dusty engineering textbooks from college. A drafting table I hadn't used in 20 years stood in the corner, covered in old blueprints for neighborhood projects. My desk was a simple, heavy oak piece we'd bought at a thrift store in 1985. I closed the study door. I locked it. I walked to the bookshelf. It was filled with hundreds of technical manuals. Structural analysis, thermodynamics, fluid mechanics. I reached for one specific book. Fundamentals of Electrical Engineering, 3rd edition. My fingers found the worn spine. I didn't pull it out. I twisted it. A sharp 90-degree turn to the right. There was no sound. Not at first. Just a faint click. And then a low hydraulic hiss. The entire bookshelf, all 8 feet of it, shivered. Then it slid smoothly, silently, into a recessed pocket in the wall, disappearing completely. Where the bookshelf had been, there was now a heavy bank vault-style steel door. I placed my thumb on a small dark panel beside it. A scanner lit up green. With another hiss, the steel door opened. I stepped inside. The room was a stark contrast to the rest of the house. It was a cold, blue-lit space. 3 walls were covered in monitors displaying stock tickers, secure email servers, and live feeds from the half-dozen microscopic cameras hidden around the house. A server rack hummed quietly in the corner. This was my real office. You see, I am not just Ed Sullivan, the retired engineer. That was a life I built, a character I played to protect my family. I was one of the first angel investors in the Seattle tech boom of the 80s. I didn't just work on projects, I funded them. I wrote a check to a small software company in Bellevue in 1984 that everyone said was a joke. That joke became a global giant. I did it again in the 90s, and again, and again. My net worth, held in offshore trusts, blind accounts, and diversified portfolios, wasn't the small pension Jenny was trying to steal. It was $28 million. I lived this lie, this simple, modest life for one reason, Jenny. I had seen what sudden, unearned wealth did to other people's children. I'd seen their ambition evaporate. I'd seen them become lazy, entitled, suspicious parasites. I didn't want that for my daughter. I wanted her to be strong. I wanted her to be independent. I wanted her to value work, to value us, not what we could give her. So I built this shield. I lived like a retired engineer. Carol knew, of course. She was my partner in everything. We lived on my pension and the small, visible savings I kept. The rest, the real money, was never to be touched. Not until we were gone. I sat at the terminal. The bitter, burning irony filled my throat until I thought I would choke. My plan to protect Jenny from greed had backfired in the most horrific way possible. By pretending to have so little, by making her believe that our small house and $150,000 was the grand prize, I had made myself the perfect target. I had made her desperate for scraps when I was sitting on a feast. My secrecy, my greatest protection, had become her motive. I sat at the steel terminal, the blue-white light of the monitors washing over my face. The rage in my veins had cooled, settling into something heavy, cold, and sharp. Focus. I typed in my credentials and accessed the local security logs. The public ones. The consumer-grade system Jenny had insisted on installing for me last Christmas. "Just so we can keep an eye on you, Dad," she'd said, smiling. The irony tasted like ash. I checked the recordings. Blank. The feed for the last 14 days was gone. Wiped clean. Matt works in IT. He's good. He thought he was smart. He thought he had covered their tracks, erasing the moment they arrived, the moment they walked my wife down those stairs, the moment they left her to rot. He thought he had erased everything. But Matt didn't know about this room. He didn't know that the simple cameras he installed were also feeding a parallel encrypted signal to an off-site server in Switzerland, a server I built myself. I opened a different portal. I typed in a 64-character alphanumeric passphrase. The real footage loaded. I clicked on the timestamp. 14 days ago, the day after I left for Vancouver. There they were. The front door camera. Jenny and Matt. They weren't smiling. They looked tense, hurried. They used their own key to enter my home. I fast-forwarded. I watched them walk through the living room. I switched to the kitchen camera. I saw them talking to Carol, my wife. She was in her robe holding a cup of tea. She looked confused, surprised to see them. I found the hallway camera, the one pointed directly at the basement door. My stomach clenched so hard I thought I would be sick. I watched my daughter Jenny put her arm around my wife's shoulder. "Mom," her voice was tinny through the small speaker. "There's a surprise downstairs. Something Dad wanted us to show you." Carol looked hesitant. "A surprise Ed didn't tell me about." Matt stepped up behind her, impatient, blocking her exit. "Come on, Carol. It'll be fun. Ed wanted it to be a secret." They guided her down the stairs, just out of the camera's frame. I waited, my breath held. 5 seconds passed. 10. Then Jenny and Matt reappeared, climbing back up the stairs. Alone. Matt was holding it in his hand. The new heavy-duty steel padlock. He looked up right at the camera. The camera he thought he had disabled. And he smiled. A quick, cold smirk. Then the feed cut as he unplugged the device. But it was too late. The stream had already been saved. I rewound. I enhanced the audio just as the feed died. I heard the heavy metallic click of the padlock. And then I heard Carol's voice, muffled. "Jenny, this isn't funny. Open the door." "Jenny." I closed the video file. My hands were perfectly steady. The time for shaking was over. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a jammed door. It was deliberate, cold, planned. I opened my financial portals. First the public one, the one Jenny knew about. The simple checking and savings account I kept at a local Seattle bank. This was the account I lived on my pension. The account I had told her was my life's savings. I kept $150,000 in it, for household emergencies, for repairs, for comfort. I stared at the screen. The balance $84.12. They had drained it. Every last penny. A series of 8 wire transfers over the last 10 days. All to an offshore account I didn't recognize. They got the money. So why leave her there to die? Why not just let her out after they had it? Then I saw it. I opened the access logs for my real money, the Swiss investment accounts, the Cayman Islands Trust, my $28 million. The logs were a flashing wall of red. Access denied. Access denied. Access denied. Dozens of failed attempts. Every day. For 10 days. They had tried. They had the $150,000, but it wasn't enough. They were trying to get the rest. And that's when I finally understood. It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. They didn't lock Carol in the basement just to steal the $150,000. They locked her up to stop her from calling me, to stop her from calling the bank, to stop her from interfering while they tried to drain everything. And when they failed, when my real security held them back, they just left her. They left her down there. They left her to die. Because a dead witness can't talk. A dead witness can't change the will. A dead witness can't stop them from trying again. They needed money. Gasp. And they were still desperate. I closed the financial portals. The red access denied alerts burned into my retinas. They were still hungry. And they were still desperate. My wife was lying in a hospital bed, her kidneys failing, and my daughter and her husband were just getting started. I leaned back in the high-tech chair, a chair that cost more than the car Jenny drove, and I hit a single button on a secure console. It wasn't a phone. It was a direct encrypted VoIP line. It rang twice. "Yes." The voice on the other end was gravelly calm and held no surprise. This was Mr. Russo. He wasn't just my lawyer. He was my architect. He was the man who had built the legal fortresses around my $28 million. The man who designed the trusts, the offshore accounts, the very secrecy that had just saved my fortune and nearly cost my wife her life. "Russo," I said. My voice was steady. The cold rage had frozen all the tremors. "It's Ed. I have a situation, a domestic one." "How bad?" he asked. He didn't ask what's wrong. He asked for a status. "They tried to kill Carol." There was a silence on the line, not of shock, of analysis. "Hu-chan, Jenny, and her husband Matt. They locked her in our basement for the entire 2 weeks I was in Vancouver. She's in the ICU, acute kidney failure, malnutrition. The doctors said 10 days, maybe more." "Motive?" Russo's voice was like ice. "Money. They drained my local savings. The $150,000. The account Jenny thought was my entire retirement." I stared at the screen showing the failed access attempts. "But they tried for the big one, Russo. They tried to get into the primary trusts. They failed. They failed, and they left her to die." Another pause. I could hear him processing. "So," he said, his voice flat, "they are still desperate. 150,000 is a lot. But it's not murder your parents' money. It's get out of town money. They're in a hole, Ed, a deep one, and the 150K didn't get them out of it." "They're coming back, Amas," I said. It wasn't a question. "Of course they are," Russo replied. "They've crossed a line they can never uncross. They can't just walk away. They tasted the money, but it wasn't enough. And now they have a loose end. A very big loose end." "Carol," I whispered. "And you," he corrected. "They don't know that you know. They think you're just a grieving old man who came home to a tragedy. And now they have a new problem. Carol is alive. She's a witness." "What did you tell the doctors?" I lied. I said the words tasting bitter. I told them she was confused, that she's been showing signs of dementia, that she must have locked herself in. "I bought us 24 hours. "Good," Russo said. It was the first hint of approval in his voice. "That's our play. That's our only move. They think she's a vegetable. Let them. They think you are a broken-down old man who just lost his mother and is about to lose his wife. Let them. Don't show your hand. Don't show your strength. A cornered animal is dangerous. But an animal that thinks it has an easy escape route, that animal is predictable." "So I play the victim," I said, the plan forming, solidifying. "You play the victim," Russo confirmed. "You are heartbroken. You are destitute. You just discovered your life savings of $150,000 is gone. You are vulnerable. You need your daughter and son-in-law more than ever. You lean on them. You let them comfort you. And while you do that, Russo said, I'm going to find out what kind of hole $300,000 is supposed to fill. They made a move, Ed. Now we make ours. Go back to the hospital. Be the grieving husband. I'll call you when I have something." I hung up. I looked at the video footage of Matt smiling at the camera. I looked at the empty bank account. I had to go back to the hospital. I had to go look my daughter in the eye. And I had to start the greatest performance of my life. I stood in that cold, blue-lit room, the phone pressed hard against my ear. Russo's voice was the only thing that felt real. Everything else, my home, my family, my entire life, had become a fog of lies. "Lean on them, Ed," Russo's voice commanded, pulling me back. "Right now they are terrified. They are wondering if Carol will wake up. They are wondering if you suspect them. Your job is to remove that fear. You have to give them exactly what they want to hear." What do I tell them?" I asked, my voice hollow. "You tell them the worst-case scenario," Russo said. His voice was devoid of emotion, a pure, cold strategy. You go back to that hospital, you find your daughter, and you break down. You tell her the doctor just gave you the news, that Carol, she's not coming back. Not really. You mean, I tell them she's brain damaged. Russo finished the sentence for me. You tell them the lack of oxygen, the dehydration. It was too much. You tell them her mind is gone. She's a vegetable. She can't speak. She can't write. She doesn't even recognize you. I flinched. The words were vile. I would have to look my daughter in the eye and tell her this monstrous lie about her mother, the mother she put in that basement. This is the only way, Ed, Russo said, as if sensing my hesitation. We need to know what they do next. If they believe Carol is no longer a threat, that she can never be a witness, they will get comfortable. They will get arrogant. They will think they've gotten away with it. He paused, letting the silence drive the point home. And then we find out what they're really after. If they were just scared about the 150,000, they might cut their losses and run. But I'm betting they won't. I'm betting that hole you mentioned is deeper than we think. So I give them an open field, I said, the plan solidifying in my mind, tasting like poison. You give them an open field, Russo confirmed. You are a grieving husband. You just lost your mother. You've now effectively lost your wife. You are 73 years old, confused, and you're alone. You need your loving daughter and son-in-law to help you. You are the perfect victim, Ed. You have to be the most convincing victim they have ever seen. He was right. This wasn't just about catching them anymore. This was about understanding the full, horrifying depth of their betrayal. This was about finding out why. Let them come to you, Russo's voice concluded. Let them show you their next move. They think they've silenced the witness. Now, let's see what they do with the survivor. Let's see what they do with you. The line clicked dead. I stood there for a long time. I was about to go to the hospital and tell my daughter a devastating lie, to set a trap for her, for trying to murder my wife. My mind couldn't. It wouldn't wrap itself around the reality of it. I looked at the video feed one last time. The image of Matt smiling at the camera. The sound of the lock clicking. The time for being a father was over. I left the secure room. The heavy steel door hissed shut behind me. I twisted the spine of fundamentals of electrical engineering. The bookshelf slid silently back into place, hiding the computers, the servers, the $28 million, hiding the truth. I walked out of the study, the old oak desk and dusty books, looking exactly as they had for 40 years. I was just Ed Sullivan, a retired engineer, a broken man. I grabbed the small overnight bag I had packed for Carol, the one with her robe and slippers. I walked out of my house, my crime scene, and drove back to the hospital. It was time to set the trap. I clutched the small overnight bag in my hand. Carol's pink robe, her worn slippers, useless comforting things. I walked back into the ICU waiting area. The smell of bleach and stale coffee hit me again, but this time I was ready. I was an actor. My role was broken old man. They were there, sitting in the same two chairs. They looked like they had been arguing. Jenny was tapping her foot, a rapid machine gun rhythm against the linoleum. Matt was staring at the wall, his jaw set. They looked up the second I entered. Their eyes were sharp, expectant. They weren't just waiting for me. They were waiting for news. I didn't walk to them. I just stopped. I let the bag slip from my fingers. It hit the floor with a soft, sad sound. I let my shoulders slump. I let the real crushing weight of my mother's death and my wife's betrayal settle over me like a shroud. I was 73, and I looked it. I looked defeated. Dad, Jenny's voice was sharp. What is it? What did the doctor say? I tried to speak. I let a half sob escape. I raised a trembling hand to my face. I just spoke with Dr. Ramirez. Matt stood up. He was all business. And what's the prognosis? I looked at him, my eyes wide, unfocused, brimming with the tears I'd been holding back. He said the time she was down there, without oxygen, and I couldn't finish the sentence. I choked on it. Dad, what did he say? Jenny demanded, walking toward me. I looked her right in the eye. He said, she's not coming back, I whispered. Not really. Matt's face went blank. Jenny's hand flew to her mouth. The tests, I stammered, following Russo's script. The brain scans. He said there's significant damage. Hypoxia. He said she'll never be the same. She won't be able to talk. She probably won't even know who we are. I let my voice crack and break completely. She's gone, Jenny. Your mother is gone. And then I saw it. It was fast. So fast, if I hadn't been looking for it, I would have missed it. It wasn't a smile. It was a release. Matt's shoulders, which had been tensed up to his ears, visibly dropped by half an inch. The tight, angry line of his jaw went slack. He glanced at Jenny. And Jenny, she met his gaze. Her eyes, wide with fake horror, held his for 1 second. And in that second, the terror vanished. It was replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated relief. The witness was gone. The woman they had left to die was no longer a threat. They had gotten away with it. Then the performance snapped back into place. Oh God! Jenny wailed a terrible theatrical sound. She lunged forward, grabbing me in a fierce hug, burying her face in my shoulder again. No, not Mom. Her body shook with manufactured sobs, but this time I could feel the tension in her arms. She wasn't holding me for comfort. She was pinning me. She pulled back her hands, gripping my arms. Her face was a mask of tear-streaked sympathy. Oh, Dad, she whispered, her voice thick with fake pity. This is terrible. Just terrible. She looked from me to the ICU door and back again. And now, she said, her voice dropping, as if a new terrible thought had just occurred to her. Now the burden, it's all on you. She squeezed my arms. The burden of her care. You're all alone in this. Oh, Dad. How are you ever going to manage? I felt the words land. A burden. That's what Carol was to them. That's what I was about to become. They weren't just relieved that Carol couldn't talk. They were excited. Because now I was the only one left. A confused, grieving 73-year-old man who they believed was suddenly in charge of an invalid wife with no money to pay for it. The trap was set. They had taken the bait. I drove home from the hospital, the clock on my dashboard reading 11 p.m. I told Jenny and Matt I needed to sleep in my own bed, that the hospital chairs were killing my back. Jenny had looked almost relieved. She needed me out of the way. She needed to talk to Matt. They needed to figure out their next move now that their primary witness was, as they believed, silenced forever. The house felt wrong. I walked in and the smell was still there. Faint, but present. A reminder. I didn't go to the bedroom. I went to my study. The dusty fake one. I sat in my old oak chair and just stared at the wall. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat in the dark, waiting. The silence of the house was deafening. This house where I had heard my daughter's first cry, where Carol and I had hosted 50 Thanksgivings, where we had built a life, and she had turned it into a tomb. At exactly midnight, the The secure phone in my pocket vibrated. Not a ring. A silent, coded vibration. I walked back to the bookshelf. I twisted the spine of the electrical engineering book. The wall hissed open. I stepped into the cold, blue light of the vault, the steel door sealing shut behind me. I sat at the terminal and answered the call. Russo. I found it, Ed. His voice was flat, like gravel. No emotion, just facts. You were right. They're desperate. But I don't think you understand the level of desperation we're dealing with. I waited. My hand was resting on the keyboard, perfectly still. Your son-in-law, Matt, Russo continued. He's not just bad with money. He's not just a failed IT guy. He's a compulsive gambler. Gambling, I said the word feeling foreign. Like weekend trips to Vegas, a few thousand. Russo let out a dry, harsh laugh. No, Ed. Not casinos. Not the kind you can walk away from. We're talking high-stakes offshore sports betting. Illegal online poker rooms. The kind of gambling where you don't pay with casino chips. You pay with collateral. My stomach dropped. What kind of collateral? Your daughter, Russo said simply. And your grandchildren. I couldn't breathe. What are you talking about, Russo? I'm talking about a debt, Ed. I used my contacts in Tacoma. Matt owes $300,000, not to a bank, to a private lending group, the kind of people who don't send polite letters when you're late on a payment, the kind of people who show up at your grandchildren's school. $300,000. The number was abstract, meaningless, until I put it in context. Russo, I said, my mind racing, connecting the dots. The money they stole, the $150,000, was a down payment, Russo finished. They gave him a deadline, Ed. He had until last Friday to come up with the first installment, $150,000, or they were going to visit Jenny. I closed my eyes. The blood rushed from my face, leaving my skin cold and clammy. Last Friday, the day after I left for Vancouver. The exact day they locked Carol in the basement. It wasn't just greed. It wasn't just to buy a new car or a bigger house. It was terror. They had sacrificed my wife, their mother, to save their own skins. So, I whispered, the pieces clicking together with a sickening final thud. They paid it. The threat is over. They're in the clear. That's the problem, Ed, Russo said, and his voice somehow got even colder. That was just the first payment. It only bought them time. They still owe another $150,000. And the people they owe, they aren't the patient type. They gave Matt 48 hours to get the rest of it. 48 hours. That was yesterday, Ed. The clock is still ticking. They are just as desperate today as they were 10 days ago. I stared at the blank monitor. They were still short. They were still terrified. The $150,000 they almost killed my wife for. It wasn't enough. They had committed this horrific, monstrous act, and it hadn't even solved their problem. So they still need money, I said. It wasn't a question. It was a death sentence. They need it now, Ed, Russo confirmed. And they just found out that the only person who can talk can't. The only person who controls the rest of the assets is a confused, grieving 73-year-old widower who thinks his life savings just vanished. Me, I whispered. You, Russo said. They aren't done, Ed. They just failed. Now, they're going to try again. The line went dead. I sat in the vault, the silence humming from the servers. $300,000, 150 paid, 150 still due, and the clock was ticking. My mind raced. They were still in the hole. The horrific act they committed, locking Carol in that darkness. It hadn't even solved their problem. It just bought them a few more days. They were still desperate. And a desperate person doesn't just stop. They needed $150,000. Now. I looked at the monitor showing my local bank account. $84.12. They had drained it. They knew there was nothing left to take from there. They had tried to access my real accounts, the $28 million, and had failed. They hit a wall. So what was left, I didn't even have to think. My eyes drifted to the security camera feed showing the dark, empty living room. The house. Our home. The only tangible, valuable asset they thought I had left. It was worth, maybe $700,000 in the current Seattle market. More than enough to cover the rest of their debt and leave them with a hefty profit. It was their only move, their last resort. But there was a problem, a big one. To sell the house, to get a home equity loan, to do anything. They needed my signature. And just as that thought formed, the full, horrifying brilliance of their strategy hit me. I finally understood their behavior at the hospital. When I told them Carol was brain damaged, that she couldn't speak, that she couldn't think, I hadn't just been setting a trap. I had been handing them a gift. Before to sell the house, they would have needed both our signatures. Carol and me. It would have been complicated. Carol was meticulous. She handled the bills. She would have questioned it. She would have stopped it. But now she was in their minds a non-entity, a vegetable, legally incapacitated, which meant only one person was left with the power to sign. Me. The confused 73-year-old widower, the man who had just lost his mother, the man whose wife was now an empty shell, the man who they believed had just discovered his entire life savings of $150,000 had vanished into thin air. I wasn't just a target anymore. I was the only target. They weren't going to try to lock me in the basement. They wouldn't need to. They would come to me with kindness. They would come to me with concern. They would wrap their arms around me, call me Dad, and guide my trembling hand to a piece of paper. Russo was right. They weren't done. They were just shifting their attack. From the brute force they used on Carol, to the psychological manipulation they were reserving for me. I looked at the clock on the monitor. It was almost 1 a.m. They were probably at their house right now, wired, panicked, figuring out this exact plan. They knew the clock was ticking. They had to act fast. Which meant I had to act faster. I had to give them the opening. I had to be the broken old man they needed me to be. I had to return to my role. I stood up, the cold resolve hardening inside me. I left the vault, the wall hissing shut, hiding my power, my truth. I walked through the dark, silent house. My house. The house they were coming for. I went to the kitchen and picked up the phone. I dialed Jenny's number. It was time to give them what they wanted. I closed the steel door of the vault. The hiss of the hydraulic lock sealing shut was the only sound in the house. The bookshelf slid back into place, hiding the monitors, the servers, the $28 million. Hiding the man I really was. I am Edward Sullivan, 73 years old. My wife is in the ICU because our daughter left her to die, and I am about to give the performance of my life. I walked back into the kitchen. The house felt huge, empty, a tomb. I picked up the kitchen phone, the old beige landline. My hand was steady, too steady. I forced it to tremble. I took a deep breath, picturing my mother's face in that hospital bed in Vancouver, the feel of her cold hand in mine as she slipped away. I didn't have to fake the grief. The grief was real. I just had to misdirect it. I dialed Jenny's number. My role was simple. I was a broken-down old man. I had just lost my mother. I had just found my wife in a basement. And now, I was about to find out I was poor. She picked up on the first ring. Her voice was sharp, anxious, like a predator sniffing the air. Dad, are you okay? Is it Mom? Is she worse? Jenny, I said. I let my voice crack. I let a dry sob catch in my throat. Jenny, honey, I'm home. I'm at the house. Dad, you sound terrible. What's wrong? You shouldn't be alone. I just, I had to talk to the hospital, I stammered. The billing department. I needed to know about the money for your mother's care. I let out another shaky breath. Oh God, Jenny. The hospital. They told me the cost. The cost? She asked, her voice suddenly guarded. For the long-term care she's going to need. I said the lie, tasting like acid. For what she is now. They said it could be $20,000 a month, Jenny. What? Her voice was a squeak. I could hear the sharp intake of her breath. Was it surprise? No. It was calculation. 20,000, I repeated, my voice rising in manufactured panic. I told them I had my savings, the emergency fund, the money your mother and I saved for 40 years, Jenny. The money I told you about. I paused, building the moment. And, she pushed her voice tight. Jenny, I let my voice break completely. I let the hysteria sound real. I just checked the account online. And what, Dad? It's gone, I shouted into the phone. It's all gone. The $150,000. It's gone, the account is empty. There's $84 left, Jenny. $84. A dead, heavy silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her mind working. I could hear her processing this new, incredible piece of information. He doesn't know we took it. He thinks someone else stole it. Dad, she said. Her voice was slow, cautious. What? What do you mean gone, like stolen? Yes, stolen, I yelled, feeding her the exact lie she needed to hear. Someone must have hacked us, maybe when I was in Vancouver. Maybe that lock on the basement. Maybe it wasn't about Mom. Maybe someone broke in at the same time and… Oh God, Jenny, I don't know. I was playing the part of the hysterical, confused old man to perfection. I was giving them a scapegoat, a hacker, an unknown thief. I was telling them they were in the clear. What am I going to do? I cried, the tears coming easily now, fueled by rage. I've lost your grandmother. I've lost your mother. And now I've lost everything. I have nothing. Jenny, I can't pay for her care. I can't even pay the mortgage next month. I let that last part hang in the air. The mortgage. I had planted the problem, $20,000 a month for Carol's care. I had planted the disaster, the stolen $150,000. The only possible solution left on the table, the only asset that could possibly save me, was the house. I was forcing her to suggest it. Dad, Jenny said. The panic was gone from her voice. It was replaced by something else. A smooth, calculating calm. A predatory, soothing. Dad, stop. Stop spiraling. You're not alone in this. But the money, the care… Forget the money, she said, her voice dripping with fake daughterly concern. It's gone. That's horrible. But you still have the house. That's an asset. We can use that. Use it, I asked, my voice small, naive, confused. How? Don't you worry about that, Dad, she said, her voice like syrup. You've been through enough. This is too much for you. Matt and I, we'll handle it. We'll figure it out. We just need to look at some paperwork. We will take care of everything. You just rest. We're coming over. She hung up. I placed the receiver back in its cradle. My hand was perfectly steady. "We're coming over." They took the bait. They took it faster than I could have possibly imagined. They were coming here, to my home, to help me. They were coming to finish the job. I didn't have time to finish my coffee. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the empty, silent house pressing in on me. I was playing the part. My head was in my hands, my shoulders slumped. I was a man who had lost everything. And I waited. It took them 12 minutes. I heard a key in the front door. Not a knock. A key. Their key. The one I gave them years ago for emergencies. I suppose for them this was an emergency. "Dad!" Jenny's voice echoed down the hall. It was thick with a syrupy manufactured concern. "Dad!" We came as fast as we could. "We're here." She walked into the kitchen, not alone. Matt was right behind her, his big frame filling the doorway. Jenny was holding a large paper bag from an expensive downtown deli, the kind of place she knew I'd never go. The prop, the offering, the classic gesture of a grieving family. "We brought you some soup," she whispered. "You have to eat something. We were so worried when you called." She set the bag on the counter, the smell of chicken noodle soup filling the room. It made my stomach turn. She came over to me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders from behind. Her hug was cold, stiff. It was the hug of a mortician, not a daughter. "Oh, Dad," she cooed, her cheek resting on the top of my head. I just can't believe it. First Grandma, now Mom, and now the money. It's too much." Matt stood by the doorway, his arms crossed. He was playing the part of the strong, stoic son-in-law. "It's a nightmare, Ed. A complete nightmare. What kind of person does that hacks an old man's bank account?" I looked up at him, my eyes intentionally blank and red-rimmed. I let my hands tremble. I don't know what to do, Matt. The hospital, that doctor, they were talking about $20,000 a month. "Shh," Jenny soothed, patting my shoulder. "Don't you worry about that right now. Don't you think about that. We're here. We are going to handle this." She pulled up a chair from the dining table and sat directly across from me, placing her manicured hands over my worn, trembling ones. Her skin was cool, almost clammy. "Dad," she said, her voice dropping into a serious, confidential tone. "Matt and we were talking in the car. We've been thinking. We've looked at the situation from every possible angle." "And," I whispered. I made myself look helpless, a child asking for answers. "And there's really only one option," she said. She glanced up at Matt. He was the enforcer. He was the one who would deliver the logical blow. Matt stepped forward, taking over. "Ed, we have to be realistic here. This isn't the time for emotion. It's time for logic. Carol needs care. That care costs money. We don't have any money. That hacker took it all." "But what about the house?" I asked, feeding them the line. The perfect, desperate question. "Exactly." Jenny jumped in, squeezing my hands. "The house. It's our only asset, Dad. It's our only move." Sell the house?" I let my voice crack with fake disbelief. "But this is our home, Jenny. This is 50 years. It's not a home anymore, Dad," she snapped. For a split second, the mask slipped. Her voice was hard, cold as steel. She caught herself immediately. She softened her tone, forcing tears into her eyes. I mean, it's just a building. Mom isn't here anymore. Not really. What matters is taking care of her. What matters is making sure she's comfortable. We can't do that if we're living in a house we can't afford. We can't do that if the hospital puts a lien on the property. They can do that, Dad. They can take the house anyway if we don't pay. She was good. She was framing the theft, this grand final theft, as an act of love, as a way to protect me. Matt stepped forward. He placed a thick, official-looking manila folder on the kitchen table. It slid across the old wood and stopped right in front of my coffee cup. What's this? I asked. It's the solution, Matt said, his voice low and firm. I had a feeling things were bad, Ed. After you called, I called our real estate agent. Just to see. She said the market in Queen Anne is high. We can sell this place fast. Cash offer. Get the money in under 2 weeks. We can pay for Carol's care. We can get you into a small, nice, manageable apartment. I stared at the folder. You already called an agent. We have to move fast, Dad, Jenny urged, her voice desperate. Before the hospital bills stack up. Before they freeze our assets. We're just trying to protect you. We will handle everything. The packing, the moving, all of it. She pushed the folder an inch closer to me. We just need you to sign. My hand was trembling. It wasn't an act. The sight of the thick folder on my kitchen table, the casual, almost bored look on Matt's face as he waited for me to sign away my life. It was all too real. I don't know, I stammered, pushing my glasses up my nose. It's so much paperwork. I don't understand these legal words. That's why we're here to help Dad, Jenny said, her voice like warm, poisoned milk. She pulled a single page from the top of the stack and slid it in front of me. It was the signature page. You don't need to read all the fine print. It's just standard real estate documents. This one just gives us permission to act on your behalf, to get the house listed, to talk to the banks. She uncapped a blue pen and placed it in my hand. Just sign here. My hand holding the pen shook violently. I need a minute. I need more coffee. I stood up, stumbling a little, playing the part of the confused old man. I reached for the coffee pot, but my shaking hand accidentally knocked over my mug. Water, lukewarm coffee, splashed across the table dangerously close to the papers. Oh God, I'm so sorry, I cried. Damn it, Ed, Matt snapped, jumping up to grab the folder. Watch what you're doing. I'm sorry. I grabbed a kitchen towel, my movements clumsy, frantic. I'm not myself. While they were focused on saving the important documents, my other hand, the one holding my smartphone, was hidden by the towel. I quickly laid the phone down, tapped the camera icon, and snapped a clear, high-resolution photo of the top page Matt had been shielding, the page with the title. Let me clean this up, I muttered. I accidentally swiped my phone into my hand along with the wet towel. I think I need to use the restroom. I'll be right back. Just hurry up, Dad, Jenny said, her patience clearly wearing thin. I walked down the hall, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. I locked the bathroom door. My hands were slick with sweat. I pulled up the photo. It was blurry. I cursed silently. I zoomed in. The title was just barely legible. Durable Power of Attorney. It wasn't a real estate document. My secure phone, the one I kept in my pocket, vibrated. A text from Russo. He never texted. Call me, now, secure line. I shoved my regular phone into my pocket and pulled out the slim, unmarked device from the vault. I went into my fake study, the one with the dusty books, and closed the door. I need privacy, I called out, my voice weak. Just a minute. I answered the call. Russo. Ed, don't sign that paper. His voice was a gunshot. No pleasantries. I just got a ping from one of my monitoring programs. A public records search was initiated against your name 10 minutes ago. They're checking for liens on your property. They're moving. I know, I said, my voice low. They're in the kitchen. They have papers. They're trying to get me to sign. They said it's to sell the house. It's not to sell the house, Ed. Russo's voice was urgent, almost frantic. A durable power of attorney, that's what you're looking at, isn't it? How did you? It's the classic move, Ed. They don't want to sell the house. Not yet. They want control. They want your signature on that document because it gives them everything. It makes them you. They can access your bank accounts, all of them, if they can find them. They can sign checks. They can take out loans in your name. They can liquidate your assets. A cold dread heavier than the basement settled on me. All of it, I whispered. No, Ed, Russo said, and his voice dropped. Not all of it. It's worse than that. You're 73. You're grieving. You're confused. And your wife is incapacitated. Read the fine print I know is in that document. I guarantee you it's not just a financial power of attorney. It's a healthcare power of attorney, too. I felt the blood drain from my face. A healthcare? What does that? It means they get to make medical decisions for you and for Carol. The kitchen, the phone, the house. It all faded. All I could hear was Russo's voice. Ed, listen to me. They don't just want your money. They want to legalize what they're doing. If they have your signature on that paper, they have the legal authority to walk into that hospital, walk right up to Carol's doctor, and tell him to stop treatment. They can tell him to withdraw care. They can let her go peacefully. They can pull the plug. And no one, not me, not the doctors, not the police, could do a damn thing to stop them. It wasn't just about the house. It wasn't just about the $300,000. They were in my kitchen offering me soup while holding a piece of paper that was a loaded gun. They were asking me, begging me, to sign my wife's death warrant. I walked out of the study, the heavy oak door clicking shut behind me. Russo's words were a cold fire in my gut. Pull the plug. They were in my kitchen, my daughter and her husband, waiting for me to sign my wife's death warrant. I leaned against the hallway wall. I had to force the adrenaline down. I couldn't be the man from the vault. I had to be the man from the basement. Broken, confused, defeated. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the kind that catches in your chest. I thought about my mother. I thought about Carol lying in that hospital bed, her skin like paper. The grief was real. The exhaustion was real. I just had to aim it at the right target. I stumbled back into the kitchen, my hand pressed to my chest, as if my heart was physically aching. They both looked up the second I appeared. Their faces were tight with impatience. "Dad," Jenny said. Her voice was sharp, a command disguised as a question. "Are you okay? You were in there for a while." I'm fine," I whispered. I didn't look at them. I looked at the floor. I let my feet drag as I walked back to the table and sank heavily into the chair. I stared at the manila folder. The blue pen was lying next to it like a weapon. Matt cleared his throat, a sound like gravel. "Ed, we need to get this done. We have to call the real estate agent, for Carol's sake." For Carol's sake. The audacity of it almost made me break character. I looked up, my eyes wide and wet. I let them see the full crushing weight of my supposed despair. I nodded slowly. "You're right," I whispered. You're right, Jenny. I can't think anymore. I'm just so tired." I looked from the folder to Jenny to Matt. "My mother, now Carol, and the money, that That hacker taking all our money. I let my voice crack. I can't fight this. I can't. I reached out a hand. I made sure it trembled, a visible palsied shake. I pulled the folder toward me. I could see the relief flood their faces. Jenny's shoulders relaxed. Matt, who had been standing stiff as a board, finally leaned back against the counter. They had won. The stupid old man was broken. "You're doing the right thing, Dad," Jenny said, her voice soft and victorious. "This lets us take the burden off you." I picked up the pen. My hand shaking hovered over the signature line at the bottom of the top page. I could see the words "durable power of attorney" in the bold header. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, I'll sign." I touched the pen to the paper, and then I stopped. I put the pen down. The shift in the room was immediate. The air went tight again. "Dad," Jenny's voice was like a whip. "What is it? Just sign the paper. It's for the best." "I know, honey, I know," I said. I looked up, my face a mask of total helpless confusion. It's just one thing. One little thing. I'm sorry. My mind is it's all jumbled." Matt let out an impatient sigh, a sharp huff through his nose. "What now, Ed?" "It's just," I tapped the top page, my finger shaking. You said, this is for Carol's medical care, right? That's why we have to sell the house for the $20,000 a month." "Yes," Jenny said, her voice strained with impatience. "That's what we told you. It lets us handle the hospital bills. It protects you from the debt." Okay, that's good." I nodded as if to myself. "That's good. But if it's medical, and it's such a big decision, I think my doctor should be here." Jenny and Matt froze. They looked at each other. "Your doctor?" Jenny repeated, her voice suddenly flat, suspicious. "Why, this is a legal paper, Dad. Not a prescription." I know, I said, waving my hand dismissively, as if swatting away her logic. "I just, Dr. Peterson, my doctor, he's known me for 30 years. He knows all about Carol's health. He's an old friend. I would feel safer if he just looked at it. Just to make sure it's all proper. For the hospital. He won't charge anything. He's a friend." I was playing the part I knew they expected. The senile old man. The man who needed his own trusted advisor to check the work, just to calm his fears. They stared at me. I could see the wheels turning in their heads. I could see them weighing the risk. An old family doctor. What harm could he do? If anything, having a doctor witness the signing would only make it look more legitimate, more valid. It would prove the confused old man had advice when he signed away his rights. Matt, the logical one, made the decision. He let out a long-suffering sigh. "Fine, Ed," he said, forcing a weary smile. "Fine. Whatever you want. If it makes you feel safer, call your Dr. Peterson. Let's get him over here. We'll all sit down and you can sign it in front of him. We don't care." He smiled at Jenny, a small, arrogant smirk. "We have nothing to hide," he said. I picked up the phone. "Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jenny. I'll call him right now. He said he could be here by tomorrow morning." I hung up the phone. I had just finished a one-sided conversation with a dial tone, but my performance was convincing. I turned back to them, my hand still resting on the old beige receiver. He said he can be here tomorrow morning," I said, my voice watery. 10 o'clock. He said he's very worried about me. About Carol." The relief in the room was so thick I could practically smell it. Jenny's entire body, which had been coiled like a spring, unwound. She let out a long, slow breath she'd clearly been holding. Matt's crossed arms finally relaxed, and he pushed himself off the wall, a small, patronizing smile playing on his lips. "See, Dad," Jenny said, walking over and patting my arm. That cold, stiff pat. "That's perfect. 10 o'clock is perfect. It gives us time to get all the other paperwork in order." "Other paperwork?" I asked, looking up at her with my wide, confused 73-year-old eyes. "Just details," Matt cut in smoothly. He was back in control. "Bank forms, real estate disclosures, things like that. In fact," he glanced at Jenny, a quick, silent communication. "In fact," Jenny picked up, "we were thinking, to make this all go faster, to make it all official and easy for you, Dad, we're going to bring our own notary public." "A notary?" I asked. "Yes," Matt said, his voice reassuring, as if explaining something to a child. "He's a professional. He'll just verify your signature. It makes the documents legally ironclad. It means that when we take this to the bank or the hospital, there will be zero delays. It's just efficient. We want to solve your money problem as fast as possible." A friend, of course. A notary who would be their accomplice. Someone who would happily watch them guide my trembling, senile hand as I signed my wife's death warrant and then stamp it with a seal of approval. They had thought of everything. "Oh," I said. "Okay. Yes, that sounds efficient. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jenny. You're taking care of everything. I don't know what I'd do without you." "We know, Dad," Jenny said, squeezing my arm. "We know. Now you need to rest. We'll be back tomorrow at 10 with the notary. And your Dr. Peterson can be here. It will be a nice, simple family meeting." They left. I heard the front door close. I heard their footsteps hurrying down the path. I even heard Matt let out a short, sharp laugh as they got to the car. They were so confident. They were so sure. I stood in the kitchen for a full minute, listening to their car pull away. Then I walked back to my study. I didn't go into the vault. I didn't need to. I just sat at my old, dusty oak desk. They were so arrogant, so blinded by my performance of the broken old man that they hadn't even stopped to ask the most basic question. They were so convinced I was senile, so sure I was theirs to control, that they hadn't even checked. I don't have a doctor named Peterson. I haven't had a doctor named Peterson in my entire life. I made him up, on the spot, and they never even questioned it. They were so busy setting their own trap, bringing their own fake notary, that they didn't realize they were about to walk willingly into mine. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, they weren't walking into a simple signing. They were walking into an ambush. And the man I was bringing, he wasn't a doctor. He was my destroyer. The doorbell rang at precisely 10 o'clock. I was sitting in my living room in the old armchair with the worn-down arms. I had put on my oldest, most stained cardigan, the one with a small hole in the elbow. My hands resting on my knees had a slight practiced tremor. I let them ring a second time just to make it look like it was an effort to get up. Jenny didn't wait. I heard her key in the lock. The door swung open. "Dad, we're here." Her voice was bright, sharp, and full of that terrible, false cheer. "We brought Mr. Henderson." They walked in. Jenny was dressed in a sharp blazer, looking like she was closing a business deal. Matt was right behind her, his bulk filling the doorway. And with them was a small, nervous-looking man in a cheap, shiny suit clutching a worn briefcase. Mr. Henderson, their notary, their accomplice. "Oh, Dad," Jenny said, rushing over. The fake sympathy was suffocating. "You look exhausted. Let's just get this over with, okay? For your own good. We can put all this sadness behind us." Matt was all business. He didn't even say hello, he just walked to the coffee table and placed the thick manila folder on it. The folder. The papers that would legalize my wife's murder. "Mr. Henderson is here to make it all official," Matt announced. I looked at the nervous man who was avoiding my gaze. Thank you for coming," I whispered, my voice sounding weak. "Of course," the man muttered, opening his briefcase. I let my trembling hand reach for the folder. I'm just so tired. I can't really think straight." "You don't have to think, Dad," Jenny said, already pulling the signature page out. "We've done all the thinking for you. You just need to sign right here." I looked at the line. My hand holding the pen they'd given me hovered over the paper. I will," I stammered. I feel better now. My old friend, Dr. Peterson, he's here too." Jenny's head snapped up. Her smile tightened. "What, Dad? Why, we don't need your doctor. We have Mr. Henderson. It's just a signature." I know, honey," I said, playing the senile, confused old man. He's an old friend. He's so worried about Carol. He just wanted to be here. To make sure I'm doing the right thing. For the medical side of it all. He said he was just parking his car." Just as I said it, the doorbell rang again. Matt let out a loud, frustrated sigh. "For God's sake, Ed. I'll get it. Let's just get this circus over with." He stormed to the front door and pulled it open, ready to rush some old doddering doctor inside. The man standing on my porch was not a doctor. He was in his 60s, tall with silver hair and eyes as cold as a winter lake. He was wearing a dark, custom-tailored Italian suit that probably cost more than Matt's car. He held a slim, expensive leather briefcase. He looked powerful. He looked like a shark. Matt just stared. He was expecting a Dr. Peterson. He got this. Can I help you?" Matt stammered. The man didn't wait for an invitation. He walked straight past Matt, his polished shoes making no sound on the hardwood floor. He walked into the center of my living room and looked at Jenny. He looked at the fake notary. Then he looked at me, and he nodded once. "Ed." Who are you?" Jenny asked. Her voice wasn't sympathetic anymore. It was high-pitched, suspicious. "Dad, who is this?" I let my tremor stop. I let my hand rest on the table rock, steady. I sat up straighter in my armchair. "Oh, this," I said. My voice was suddenly clear. It was firm. It was cold. "This is my friend, the one I told you about." The man in the suit turned his icy gaze on Jenny. "My name," he said, and his voice cut through the room like a scalpel, "is Mr. Russo. I am not a doctor." He paused, letting the words land. "I am Mr. Sullivan's chief financial advisor. I have been managing his extensive holdings for the last 20 years. Silence. Absolute deafening silence. Jenny's face went white. Not pale. Chalk. Her fake smile froze, then shattered. Matt looked like he had been physically punched in the stomach. He just gaped. "Financial? What?" he whispered. "The notary, Mr. Henderson started sweating. He nervously picked up his briefcase, his eyes darting to the door. "Mr. Sullivan's holdings," Russo continued, "which you failed to access, I might add. Your attempts to brute force the Swiss trust, they were amusing. You left a digital trail a child could follow." Dad, what is this?" Jenny shrieked, finding her voice. "What is he talking about? You're a retired engineer. The money is gone, you told me. Oh, the 150,000, I said, standing up. My back was perfectly straight. "That wasn't my life savings, Jenny. That was my vacation fund. The money you almost killed your mother for. It was nothing. And Ed, Russo said, turning to me, his voice dangerously smooth, I believe you're expecting the rest of your guests. He turned back to the still open front door. Gentlemen, doctor, you can come in now. 3 people walked in. The first was a woman in a white coat with a Swedish hospital ID badge clipped to her pocket. The other 2 were not doctors. They were tall, they were stone-faced, and they were wearing the dark blue, unmistakable uniforms of the Seattle Police Department. The fake notary, Mr. Henderson, saw the police uniforms. His sallow face went a shade grayer. He snapped his briefcase shut with a loud click. I think I have the wrong address, he stammered, already moving toward the door. One of the officers, a tall woman with a gaze that could cut glass, simply put her hand on his shoulder and gently pushed him back. I don't think so, sir. Please, and have a seat. We have some questions for you, too. Matt finally found his voice. It wasn't the smooth, controlled tone he'd been using. It was a low, animalistic growl of pure disbelief. What the hell is this? He jabbed a thick finger toward me, his face turning a dark, blotchy red. Ed, what did you do this senile old man? He's finally snapped. He's lost it. He's calling the cops on his own family. I looked at him. I let the tremor in my hands stop. I let the fog of confusion in my eyes clear, replaced by a cold, hard focus. I felt my spine, which had been stooped in the armchair, straighten. I was no longer the broken old man. I was Edward Sullivan. I'm not senile, Matt, I said. My voice. It wasn't the weak, reedy whisper they had been hearing for the past 24 hours. It was the voice that had closed $100 million deals. It was the voice that had built an empire. It was low. It was clear. And it was vibrating with absolute authority. The change was so sudden, it was like a slap in the face. Jenny's head snapped toward me. Her eyes widened. That was the moment. Not when Russo walked in, but when she heard my voice. That was the moment she knew the game was over. I'm not confused, I repeated, standing up from the armchair. I wasn't the man who needed help. I was the man in charge. And I'm not Lulan Senile, but I know you are desperate. I know about the $300,000, Matt. The money you owe the private lending group in Tacoma. If my voice was a slap, those words were a punch to the gut. Matt physically recoiled. He didn't just look shocked. He looked hunted. What are you talking about? Jenny stammered, her eyes darting between me and Matt. But what 300,000? Oh, he didn't tell you about that part, honey, I asked, raising an eyebrow. He only told you about the 150,000. The amount you needed to pay off just the first installment, the one that was due last Friday. Jenny's face crumpled. She looked at Matt. Matt, it's all lies, Matt roared, finding his bluster again. He's insane. He's making it all up. You can't prove any of this. You have nothing. That's where you're wrong, Mr. Russo said. He stepped forward, opening his slim leather briefcase. He didn't pull out papers. He pulled out a high-definition tablet. Proof, he said, is my specialty, Mr. Kane. He placed it on the coffee table facing them. He tapped the screen. My hallway. My house. My wife Carol in her robe. We all watched in silence as Jenny put her arm around her mother. We heard Jenny's voice captured in crystal clarity. Mom, there's a surprise downstairs. We watched Matt step up behind Carol, blocking her path. We watched them guide her down the stairs. We watched them reappear, alone. And then, we watched Matt Kane, my son-in-law, hold up the new steel padlock. We watched him look directly at the hidden camera, and we watched him smile. The notary, Mr. Henderson made a small, sick sound in the back of his throat. That's fake, Jenny shrieked. That's deep fake, you did that. And this, I suppose, Russo said, tapping the screen again, is also a fake. An audio file played. A phone call. We heard Jenny's voice, frantic. I don't care what you have to do, Matt. You find that money you promised. They said they would visit us. They know where the kids go to school. Jenny let out a high-pitched animal keen. No, that's not. And finally, Russo said, there is this. He swiped again. The wire transfers, $150,000, 8 transactions, all moving from my local Seattle account to an untraceable offshore account. An account that Russo's forensic team had already cracked and traced directly to Matthew Kane. It was over. The evidence was absolute. Matt looked at Jenny. His eyes were dead. You, he started. But Jenny exploded. She wasn't a cold, calculating planner anymore. She was a cornered rat. And she did what cornered rats do. She attacked her partner. He made me do it, she screamed, pointing a trembling, accusing finger at Matt. She scrambled across the floor, grabbing the leg of my pants. She looked up at me, at the police, her face a grotesque mask of tears and terror. It was him, he came to me. He told me he owed money. He said they would hurt us. He said they would hurt my children. She clung to me, her nails digging into my leg. Dad, please, you have to believe me. I didn't want to. I didn't know. I didn't know about the other 150. He said we just needed that one payment. He said we'd put her down there just for a day, just until the transfer cleared. I never meant for her to. She dissolved into hysterical sobs, collapsing onto the floor. I just wanted the 150,000. It was him. It was all him. The police officers looked at each other. They had their confession. It was the most pathetic and most damning betrayal I had ever witnessed. It was him. It was all him. Jenny was a heap on my living room floor, her hands grasping at the leg of my pants, her face a grotesque mask of tears and terror. He made me do it, Dad. Please, you have to believe me. Matt just stared at her, his face ashen. The look in his eyes was pure, unadulterated hatred. His partner, his wife, had just thrown him under the bus to save herself. Is that true, Mr. Kane? One of the police officers asked, her voice bored, as if she'd seen this pathetic betrayal 100 times. Did you force your wife to lock her mother in a basement? Matt opened his mouth, a desperate denial forming. And then a sound. A click. It was the sound of a bedroom door down the hall opening. Every head in the room turned. Jenny froze, her mouth still open in a silent sob. Matt's denial died in his throat. Even the police officers tensed. She stood in the doorway. It was my wife. It was Carol. She wasn't in a hospital bed. She wasn't a vegetable. She was standing tall, her 71-year-old frame surprisingly steady. She was wearing her pink robe, the one I had packed for her, and her eyes were not vacant. They were on fire. Jenny made a sound, a small, choked gasp. Mom. She scrambled backward on the floor, crab-walking away, her face a mask of complete gibbering terror. But, you, the doctor, Ed, you said, you can't. Carol took a step into the living room, then another. Her gaze never left our daughter's face. I've been able to talk for a week, Jenny, Carol said. Her voice wasn't the weak rasp I'd heard in the basement. It was strong. It was clear. And it was vibrating with a rage that matched my own. I was in the guest room, Carol continued, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. I've been listening. I listened to Ed come home. I listened to him talk to Russo. I listened to you walk in here just now, all smiles and fake soup, ready to trick your father into signing away my life. Jenny was shaking her head, her hands over her ears. No, No, no. You left me to die of thirst, Carol said, her voice dropping each word a hammer blow. But you know what the worst part is, Jenny, the part that will send you to hell? Carol pointed a trembling, righteous finger at her. It's that I heard you. I was on the other side of that door for 10 days. I heard you and Matt fighting about money. I heard you tell him. I heard you say that locking me down there was the only way to solve the problem. You called me the problem, Jenny. Your own mother. Jenny just whimpered. The tall officer nodded to her partner. It was time. They stepped forward. Jenny Sullivan, Matthew Kane, the officer said, her voice formal, final. You are under arrest for attempted murder in the first-degree kidnapping and financial fraud. Please stand up and place your hands behind your backs. Matt didn't move. He was just staring at Carol, defeated. Jenny. She just stayed on the floor, rocking back and forth, sobbing. I just wanted the money. I just wanted the money. I watched the officers pull her to her feet, her hands cuffed behind her. I looked at this woman, my daughter, and I felt nothing, just cold. Carol walked over to me. She didn't look at them. She only looked at me. She took my hand. Her hand was warm. It was real. It's over, Ed, she whispered. I watched them take my daughter away. The 3 months between their arrest and the trial were a different kind of hell. The physical healing was slow. Carol's kidneys, by some miracle the doctors couldn't explain, began to function again. They called her a medical marvel. I knew what it really was. It was pure, unadulterated spite. It was a refusal to die, a refusal to let them win. But our house was no longer a home. It was a museum, a place where a family used to live. The media, of course, had found us. The story was too lurid to ignore. Basement Grandma, one of the local tabloids called her a nickname that made my stomach clench. Savage Daughter's Deadly Greed, another headline screamed. We stopped answering the door. We stopped answering the phone. We just waited. Russo handled everything. He told us the trial date was set. He told us they were both pleading not guilty. When we walked into the King County Courthouse, I felt like I was walking underwater. The air was thick. Carol held my hand. Her grip wasn't the frail, trembling grasp of a victim. It was tight, her knuckles white. I looked at her. She was 71 and she looked it, but her eyes were like steel. Then I saw them. They were led in wearing bright orange jumpsuits. They weren't my family. They were inmates. This wasn't my daughter. This was a shell. Her hair was stringy, her face pale and gaunt. Matt looked smaller. The arrogance, the physical intimidation, it was all gone, replaced by a dull, sullen, rat-like fear. They wouldn't look at us. They wouldn't even look in our direction. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Harris, didn't waste time. She was all business. She laid out the timeline for the jury. My trip to Vancouver to bury my mother. The empty house. The steel padlock. The 10 days. Then she presented the evidence. She started with the video from my secure server. The courtroom was dead silent as they watched my daughter Jenny put her arm around her mother. They heard her tinny voice. Mom, there's a surprise downstairs. They watched Matt step up behind Carol, blocking her path. They watched them reappear, alone. And then, the prosecutors zoomed in. They watched Matt Kane, my son-in-law, hold that padlock up to the hidden camera and smile. A collective audible gasp went through the courtroom. Then came the audio. The phone call Russo had intercepted. Jenny's voice frantic, ugly. I don't care what you have to do, Matt. Find that money. They said they would visit us. They know where the kids go to school. And then the call I made from the kitchen. My own voice hysterical, broken, crying about the stolen money, the hacker. And then Jenny's voice suddenly calm, predatory, soothing. Don't you worry, Dad. You still have the house, we can use that. Testifying was the hardest thing I have ever done. Harder than watching my mother die. Harder than breaking that lock. I sat in the witness box. Matt's lawyer tried to twist me in knots. Mr. Sullivan, isn't it true you are a multimillionaire? Isn't it true you hid $28 million from your own daughter? Isn't it true you lied to her? Her entire life. I looked at him. I looked at the jury. I did not lie. I said, my voice steady. I lived modestly. I wanted my daughter to value work, not inheritance. My financial privacy is not a crime. Leaving her mother to die of thirst, that is. But it was Carol who destroyed them. She walked to the stand slowly, but without a cane. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like a survivor. The prosecutor asked her, Mrs. Sullivan, what did you think about when you were in that basement? Carol was silent for a moment. She looked right at Jenny. At first, she said, her voice clear and strong, I thought about water, then I thought about my son, the one I lost years ago, and finally, I thought about her, my daughter, and I realized I didn't recognize her. The person who did this to me was a stranger. That's when they broke. When it was their turn. The united front evaporated. It was pathetic. Jenny's lawyer argued she was a terrified wife, a victim of coercion forced by her violent, gambling addict husband. She cried on the stand. I was scared he made me do it. He said they would hurt my children. Then Matt's lawyer stood up. He painted Jenny as the real monster, a greedy, sociopathic mastermind. He claimed she was the one who found out about the debt, that she was the one who came up with the basement plan, that she was the one who saw her brain-damaged mother as a problem that needed to be erased. Mr. Kane, his lawyer said, was just trying to protect his family. His wife, she was the one who pushed it too far. They were two scorpions in a bottle stinging each other to death. The jury was out for less than an hour. That's how fast it was. We all stood. I held Carol's hand. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree against Carol Sullivan, how do you find guilty? On the charge of kidnapping in the first degree, how do you find guilty? On the charge of financial fraud, guilty. It was a clean sweep. The judge didn't wait long for sentencing. He called them a stain on the community. He looked at Matt. For your history of involvement with organized crime, for the calculated cruelty of your actions, I sentence you to 30 years in the state penitentiary. Matt just stared blank. Then the judge looked at Jenny, my daughter. For the betrayal, the profound, unnatural betrayal of the mother who gave you life, I sentence you to 25 years. Jenny didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just deflated. A balloon with the air let out. It was done. It was finally, truly over. The courtroom was empty. The verdict was in. The gavels had fallen. And the silence that was left was heavier than any I had ever known. Jenny was gone, taken to a holding cell. Matt was gone. The jury, the reporters, the whispering crowds, all gone. It was just me and Carol sitting in the polished mahogany office of Mr. Russo. Rain lashed against the tall windows, a fitting gray Seattle soundtrack to the end of our world. Russo was on the phone across the room. His voice a low murmur finalizing the legal details, the freezing of assets, the lawsuits that would now begin against Matt's co-conspirators. He was all business. I just stared. I stared out the window at the city I had helped build, at the companies I had funded, at the life I had so meticulously constructed. This empire of secrets. I did it to protect her, I said. My voice was quiet. It sounded strange in the expensive room. Carol, who was sitting in a leather armchair, didn't look at me. She was staring at her own hands folded in her lap. Her hands, they still had faint scars from the basement floor. I did it all to protect her. I insisted more to myself than to her. The money, the 28 million. I've seen what it does, Carol. We saw it in the 80s. We saw those tech kids, the ones who got rich overnight. Their families, their children, they became empty, entitled, weak. I didn't want that for Jenny. I stood up and walked to the window. The rain was streaking down the glass like tears. I thought if we lived like this, in our little craftsman house, if I pretended to be a simple engineer, I thought it would teach her values. I thought it would teach her that hard work mattered, that family mattered, not bank accounts. I thought my secrecy was a shield. I was protecting her from the very poison that ended up that. No, Ed. Carol's voice cut through my justification. It wasn't angry, it was just tired. Infinitely tired. She finally looked up at me. Her eyes were clear. You think you were protecting her, she said. But you weren't. You were lying to her. Our entire life. Her entire childhood. It was a lie. I turned to face her. It wasn't a lie, Carol. It was a lesson. A lesson in what? She asked, her voice gaining a sharp steel edge that I hadn't heard before, not even in the courtroom. A lesson in scarcity, a lesson in hiding. We didn't just live modestly, Ed. We lived a deception. We created a distance, a gap, between who we were and who she thought we were. And that gap, that's where he grew. I didn't understand. Matt, no, she said, shaking her head. The monster. You think she became this way just because of him? You set the stage for him. That's not fair, I whispered. Isn't it? She stood up, walking toward me. She grew up in a house where money was never ever discussed, where new clothes were a luxury, where vacations were camping trips. She grew up watching her friends get new cars for their 16th birthdays while she got our 10-year-old sedan. We told her it was because we couldn't afford it. We taught her to be ashamed, to be hungry. You didn't vaccinate her against greed, Ed. You made her ravenous for the one thing you pretended we didn't have. I stared at her, the blood draining from my face. And then, she continued, her voice breaking with a lifetime of held-back truth. When she got into trouble, real trouble, with a man like Matt, did she come to us? Did she come to her father and mother and say, I'm scared. He owes money. They're threatening us. I need help. She shook her head, a single bitter tear rolling down her cheek. No, she didn't. And why would she? Why would she ask two poor retired people for help with a $300,000 debt? She thought we were just as poor and helpless as she was. She couldn't see us as a safety net, Ed. She saw us as another burden. She was right. Oh God, she was right. So when she looked at us, at me, she whispered, her voice full of a pain that was deeper than the basement. She didn't see parents she could run to. She saw an asset, a problem to be solved. The house, the small savings, the inheritance. You didn't teach her to ask Ed. You taught her that the only way to get what she wanted was to take it. By force, because we would never understand. Russo had finished his call. He was standing by his desk, silent. a witness to this final devastating verdict. I looked at Carol, my partner, the woman who had kept my secret, this $28 million lie, for our entire life together. My silence. I stammered the words, feeling like glass in my throat. My plan to protect her. It's what made her a... I couldn't say it. It's what allowed her to become this, Carol finished. It's what turned her into a stranger who would leave me on a concrete floor to die, for a fraction of what you would have given her, if she had just asked. I sank back into the chair. The truth was finally horribly clear. My attempt to save my daughter from the poison of wealth was the very thing that had created the monster. "My God, Carol," I whispered, burying my face in my hands. I failed. I failed her. I failed us." Carol walked over to the window, her back to me. She stood there for a long time, just watching the Seattle rain wash the grime from the city streets. I sat there stewing in my failure, a 73-year-old man who had built an empire in secret, only to have it completely destroy his family. I was a fool. "No," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room, silencing the sound of the rain, silencing the self-pity in my head. I looked up. She turned around. Her eyes were not filled with tears. They were clear. They were strong. "No," she repeated. "We did not fail, Ed. She failed. She made a choice. We raised her to know right from wrong. We gave her love. We gave her a safe home. We gave her every opportunity to be a good person. And she chose to put her mother in a basement. She chose to value money over a human life. That is not our failure. That is her choice." I wanted to believe her. I needed to. "But the money, Carol, the secret. You said it yourself. It created this. It made her hungry." Carol agreed, walking toward me. "Yes, it did. Our secret was a mistake. A terrible, life-altering mistake. We thought we were protecting her, but we were just hiding. We were hiding from the world. We were hiding from our own daughter. And that secret, it festered. It became a poison." She stopped right in front of my chair. "But you can't cure poison by hiding it, Ed. You cure it by bringing it into the light. You cure it by using it." I looked up at her, confused. "Using it? What are you talking about?" "This," she said. Her voice filled with a new, sudden energy I hadn't heard in decades. "The $28 million. This thing that we have kept locked in a vault, this secret that ruined our lives. It's not a secret anymore, Ed. Russo knows. The police know. The courts know. It's out." She was right. The trial had made my net worth a matter of public record. The secret was gone. "It's not a secret anymore," she whispered, a strange, fierce light in her eyes. "It's a tool. It's a weapon. And I, for one, I am done hiding. I am done being the poor, simple Mrs. Sullivan." I spent 10 days on a concrete floor thinking about all the things I would do if I survived. And I survived. A new feeling was rising in my chest, pushing past the grief. It was a cold, sharp, unfamiliar thing. It was purpose. What are we going to do, Carol?" "We are going to take this money," she said, this curse, "and we are going to turn it into a sword. We are going to take the very thing that Jenny and Matt tried to kill us for, and we are going to use every last penny of it to make sure what happened to us never happens to another parent again." I stared at her. The idea was massive. It was terrifying. It was perfect. "We're not going to hide it, Ed," she said, her voice building. "We're going to publicize it. We're going to put our names on it. We're going to create a foundation. We're going to hire lawyers, not just sharks like Russo, but an army of them. We're going to offer free legal services to every elderly person in this state, in this country, who is being preyed upon by their own family." The failure, the guilt, it was still there. But it was changing. It was crystallizing. It was hardening. From grief into resolve. "She called me a burden," I whispered, remembering Jenny's voice in the hospital. "Then we will become a burden to every greedy, heartless child who sees their parents as nothing but a bank account," Carol answered. I stood up. I took my wife's hands, the hands that were still scarred. "We will call it the Sullivan Fund," I said. Carol shook her head. "No, not just Sullivan." She looked at me, her eyes like steel. "We will call it the Sullivan Kane Foundation. We will put their names right next to ours. We will make the very name of the monster who did this the symbol of his own destruction." It has been 1 year, 365 days since I sat in that courtroom and watched my daughter, my only daughter, be sentenced to 25 years in prison. I am 74 years old now. Carol is 72. Our little house in Queen Anne is sold. The vault is empty. The secrets are gone. Today we are not in a courtroom. We are standing on the steps of a beautiful old brick building downtown, the kind with stone pillars and a sense of permanence. A large, tasteful banner hangs above the door. It reads, "The Sullivan Kane Foundation." There are cameras, reporters, dozens of people, old, young supporters, lawyers, even the mayor. It's cold. The Seattle wind is sharp, but I don't feel it. I look at Carol. She is not the woman I found on the basement floor. She is not the shell from the hospital. Her gray hair is cut in a stylish, sharp bob. She is wearing an elegant dark blue coat. She looks formidable. Russo, our old friend, our architect, steps up to the microphone. He introduces us. "It is my profound honor to present the founders of this foundation, Edward and Carol Sullivan." A wave of polite applause. I walk to the podium. I look out at the sea of faces, the flashing cameras. I am not the man I was. I am no longer hiding. "For 40 years, I begin. My voice is steady, amplified by the microphone. It sounds strange, public. For 40 years, my wife and I, we kept a secret. We have considerable wealth, and we hid it. We lived in a small house, we drove old cars. We pretended to be simple retired people." I can see the confusion on some of the reporters' faces. This isn't the story they expected. "I kept this secret," I continue, "because I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought it would protect my family. I thought it would shield my daughter from the poison that unearned money can become. I thought if we lived modestly, I could teach her the value of hard work, the value of family, the value of love over things." I pause. I look at Carol. She nods, encouraging me. "I was wrong." The words hang in the air. I was catastrophically wrong. My secret didn't create a shield. It created a lie. It created a distance. It created a daughter who grew up feeling hungry in a house that was secretly full of food. And when she and her husband fell into a desperate, dark place, they didn't see us, her parents, as a safety net. They saw us as a target. They saw us as an obstacle, a problem to be solved, to get to the small amount of money they thought we had. I take a deep breath. My secrecy, it didn't protect my family. It destroyed it. It cost me It cost me my daughter. And it almost cost me my wife. I reach out and take Carol's hand. Her grip is like iron. Today, we end the secrets. We take this money that was once a poison, and we turn it into a tool, a public tool. This foundation, the Sullivan Cain Foundation. I say the names. I force myself to say them. We kept their names. We kept them as a constant public reminder that the greatest betrayals do not come from strangers in the dark. They come from the people we love, the people who sit at our dinner tables. This foundation, I say, my voice rising, finding its strength, will dedicate every single one of our $28 million to providing free aggressive legal services to any elderly person who is facing financial abuse from their own family. We will fund the lawyers. We will hire the investigators. We will be the shield that I failed to be for my own wife. I look out at the crowd, at the other older faces nodding back at me. We have lost our daughter. We have lost our past. We cannot get that back. But we can, and we will, fight for your future. We will protect the thousands of other mothers and fathers, the other Carols and Eds who are right now, this very minute, being seen as nothing more than a burden, a problem to be solved, an obstacle to an inheritance. We are done hiding. Our new purpose is to fight. I step back from the podium. The applause is loud. It's not just polite, it's supportive. It's real. I turn to Carol. She has tears in her eyes, but she is smiling. She leans her head on my shoulder. "It's over, Ed," she whispers. "No, honey," I whisper back, holding her hand as we look out at our new, unexpected future. It's just beginning. The most painful lesson from this wasn't just about greed. It was about the devastating price of secrets. I spent 40 years building a wall of secrecy around my wealth, believing I was protecting my daughter from a poison. But that very wall created a stranger. It bred resentment, it fostered desperation, and it made my family vulnerable to the very corruption I feared. By hiding the truth, I didn't teach her values. I only taught her that we were poor and helpless. True protection doesn't come from hiding the truth. It comes from building trust. An honest, open conversation. That is the only shield that truly works. What would you have done if you were in my shoes, and have you ever seen secrecy destroy a family? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.